Hey everyone, this is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology, and today I am joined by a former student, alumni, and a very interesting astrologer, Colleen Cara, who is going to be talking about her journey with professional astrology. And we are also going to talk about some of the most unique and interesting astrological artwork that she makes that I think I've ever seen before. It's really unique, and one of the main reasons I wanted to have her on was to talk about how she makes these really beautiful like astrological artwork installation, sound, audio. They're just beautiful. I don't even know what to call them because I've never seen anything like it before. So anyway, I'm really glad to have her here today. Before we get into it and I bring her on to talk, don't forget to like and subscribe, share your comments in the comments section, click on the notification bell, all of which helps the channel to grow. I really appreciate it when you guys do that. Transcripts of my daily talks can always be found on my website, nightlightastrology.com, where right now we are running a few sales. We have 2 classes that are starting in the winter, and we have pre-registration sales that last until September 12th. We have a masterclass series that begins on February 17th. If you go over to nightlightastrology.com, you can learn more about it. Here's the masterclass series. Starts in February and meets once per season, 4 classes per season on a new topic. These are advanced topics in ancient astrology. We're talking about the mysteries of the moon cycle and how to apply the phasal dynamics of the sun and the moon in ancient astrology. We're looking at morning star, evening star, cycles of Venus and Mercury, and how to read those phasal dynamics in birth charts in the spring series. In the summer series, we're looking at the art of zodiacal releasing, so an advanced timing technique in ancient astrology. And then in the fall, we're looking at temperament and personality in the birth chart according to the ancient temperament theory of choleric, sanguine, phlegmatic, melancholic types. Really interesting topic. I'm really excited to teach on all of these, and I really hope to see some of you in these advanced classes. If you sign up now, you can save several $100s off. There's a payment plan, there's tuition assistance as always. You can always buy just one of the classes if there was, you can always buy them like a la carte, buy 1 or 2 if you wanted to. They're a little bit more expensive that way, but certainly that's a possibility. And tuition assistance makes sure no one's ever priced out. The other program that I'm really excited about is the Roots and Spheres class that Ashley and I will be teaching. Over the course of 2023, we will be meeting before every new and full moon to discuss the astrology of the month, breaking the month into half. So we'll look at the astrology of the first half of the moon cycle and the second half of the moon cycle. And we're going to be working on creating meaningful rhythms and practices and rituals in our lives so that the astrology becomes more than just information we're taking in, but a more intentional spiritual connection. We're also going to be doing that by means of dieting certain plant teachers that go along with the astrological energies of each moon cycle. I'm really excited to teach this program. The connection between plant teachers, plant wisdom, and astrology is really old. It's as old as the dawn of astrology itself. You can save a little bit of money with the early bird payment if you want. There's a payment plan, and as always, we have tuition assistance for people who might be struggling financially. We try to make sure that no one's ever priced out if it's a course you want to take. So all of that being said, I am really excited to have Colleen Cara here today, who is an astrologer and an artist and someone who went through a couple of my programs. Colleen, welcome.
Hi, Acyuta. It's so great to be here. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. I'm going to show people as much as I can about, I can't actually stream any of the videos that you've made and the beautiful astrological artwork that you've created, but that's a big thing I want to talk about today, and we're going to get to that. So I don't mean to like bury the lead, because I think that's one of the coolest things I've ever seen, and I can't wait to talk about it. But before we get there, I want to just ask you how astrology ever came. You practice, you read for people, you teach workshops.
Yep.
You are an astrological artist. You're an artist who marries astrology with art together. So you do a lot of things. How did you first get interested in astrology?
Oh man, so quite early it came into my life. So I got my first chart actually done when I was around 20 years old.
Okay.
But prior to that, there was like this real turning point in my life. Like there was a day that kind of changed everything and set me off into a trajectory. And I was 15 years old. It was summertime, and we used to go visit my grandmother in Western New York. and it's a rural area. And usually it's a pretty, you know, my grandmother's house would be a pretty bustling place. There's a lot of extended family out there, people coming and going. But for some reason, this particular summer, this particular period of time, there wasn't that many people around. It was me, my mom was there. I think people were just working that day. And it's strange because, you know, I must have been complaining that I was bored or something.
Right.
You know, bored at grandma's house in the country.
Right.
And so, you know, my mom went out to do some errands, and I was sitting at the kitchen table when she got home, and I was reading like I had some rock magazines, so I was reading these magazines. And so she comes over to me and she plopped down a sketch pad and like some pencils in front of me. And it was like so random, like out of the blue, because I never expressed an interest in art at all. Like I didn't talk about it. I didn't ask about it. It wasn't anything that I was doing. You know, maybe, you know, like in grammar school or middle school, right? So, you know, I kind of looked at her like, what's this all about? And she just basically shrugged, you know, like, well, you know, you're so bored, do something. So I started to sketch one of the images in the magazine. So I did this sketch of David Lee Roth. Right? And this doesn't sound like it's connected maybe to the astrology, but it'll get there. So, you know, so I did this sketch. It was the first time I'd ever done anything like this. And I was like, okay, wow, this is, you know, it didn't come out too bad. And at that moment, I just like latched onto it and like held on for dear life, basically, because it was like, I saw it, it was like this whole world opened up to me. And I saw it as like, oh yes, this is my ticket out. Like, this is my ticket. This is something I can work with. Because, you know, prior to that, I was interested in music, right? So I was just, you know, and I didn't really have necessarily a direction. You know, I knew what I liked, but didn't have a direction. So that set this series of events in motion. You know, I think when I went back to high school that year, like I changed as many classes as I could and took art classes. But what really happened was it opened me up, because I started to like think about, you know, like ideas and possibilities and what's creativity and what does this mean? And how did I not know I could do this prior to this event happening? And with that kind of opening up to, you know, using my imagination more, and really experiencing, you know, art as a meditation. You know, drawing is something that's a really meditative practice. And so with that, I really started to experience like different, different kind of spiritual phenomena with that. So I started to be, you know, much more sensitive, much more intuitive, starting to ask questions. And, you know, that led to like investigating like the tarot. And like, once you sort of get going down that path, you will run into astrology. And so at some point I did, and I found out, oh, well, there's so much more than your sun sign. There's like, you know, all of the planets, and they're in these different positions and they can have these different meanings. So I was hooked, you know, pretty early. So like I said, I got my first chart done when I was about 20 years old. And then life moved on and it progressed. And I, you know, went to school, went to art school and all of that. And you know, kept on studying. So it was always like this parallel of like, you know, doing art and then also investigating the spiritual side of life. So I was like reading all kinds of books, like everything from like, you know, Edgar Casey, like reading about Edgar Casey to, you know, like Ruth Montgomery, to different metaphysical stuff. And then I got really into earth-based spirituality, especially when I was in undergraduate. And that led to, you know, different studies of like the goddess and nature-based spirituality. And, you know, time moved forward. And I, you know, went to Chicago, and then I even further, you know, got into music, had a band for a while, was doing things in Chicago, and then kept on, you know, studying, practicing, went to grad school. But, you know, the astrology would come in and out, right? So it was like in waves. It would surface, it would recede, it would surface, and it would go away. And then after grad school, did the academic thing for, quite a few years, probably for the last 12 years. And I was teaching in academia. And about 6 or 7 years ago, I was in between teaching gigs. I had made a new friend, and we were out to lunch one day, and she started talking about, oh yeah, the astrology and how it was impacting her. And I thought, oh yeah, and she suggested I follow a couple of people. And so it didn't even dawn on me that I could go on YouTube and start, at that point, because, when I started getting into it, you didn't have that,
Right.
there wasn't that access.
Right.
And so, so I started to follow people. So for like the last, 7 years. And then at some point, probably around 2019, early 2020, I found one of your videos popped up on my feed. So I started watching. And, this was right around, 2019 into 2020 when we had this big shift. And that year, and there was a lot of stuff that changed in my life. I went through a lot of loss that year. And so it was, pretty intense and pretty profound. And then you were advertising for that fall. And, I just loved, how you presented your material, how you wove in the philosophy, sort of just, the methods of how you went about presenting astrology. And I just was like, okay, yeah, this is my teacher. I have to jump into this course. And really, it was, it was for just me personally. I had no intentions of being a professional astrologer. It was just like, it was helping me so much, because that's one of the most amazing things that astrology does, is it gives us perspective. It gives us a bird's eye view. We can see the cycles. We can see, what's happening. It helps us to cope, especially when we're going through like really difficult times. And so I jumped in, it was fantastic. And before I knew it, going through the program, I just thought, I can actually do this. Like, this is something like I love. It makes me excited. I love that it helps people. And it does. It really helps people.
Yeah.
And so that was, the main reason. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an incredible story. I think, I guess was there a moment? I always like to ask this question: when did you know, or how did you start to know that like this is going from a hobby and an interest or a personal, something that's working for your inner life, to, I think I want to do this for other people? Like, how did that happen? Was there something that happened, or was it just a slow dawning?
Oh boy, it was a slow dawning. I mean, I knew that it was useful and helpful, and I knew that I could like help other people with it, but there was definitely this kind of tug of war that I was having within myself of like, I've built this whole career, like I've kind of done all of these things that are sort of behind me and that I'm not, that I'm uncertain about for the future. So it was really sort of grappling with like, okay, how does this integrate? How does this work in my life? Knowing that I wanted to do it. So, but I really I was patient with it, and I was patient with myself to just let it unpack.
Yeah.
Just let it evolve and unpack. Yeah.
I think that's really important, because it can be quite romantic to say that there's a moment where, the heavens open, the light pours down, and you receive some kind of, Joan of Arc vision in the garden that like, oh, I shall become an astrologer, But I think that for a lot of people, there is a process where the inspiration, the interest are cooking, and you don't know what's going to come out of it, and the uncertainty and the waiting and seeing are, it's so important. It's like the care, you have to stir the pot once in a while, and you have to care for it. You also have to let it cook, and it's something like that. I think that that's far more common than, like, if I look back at my own path, there were certain moments that were like more illuminating or inspired than others. But I think like big decisions, when I thought, okay, I'm going to launch a practice, I mean, that was kind of a big moment. But the things that led up to that moment were those spaces of sacred anxiety. I love this, but I don't know what could I do something with this? I don't know. No, I'll just keep reading, and just the back and forth internally.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's different for everybody, right? I think some people just jump right in. It's totally natural. There's, no inhibitions. For me, it was just more like, no, if I'm gonna do this, if I'm gonna be serious about this, I want it to feel right. And so it just took, it just took that amount of time of kind of like testing things and starting to read for people and really seeing the potential. And, it's actually been quite liberating. Like there's something so liberating about the independence of it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? And just the exploration of it, meeting people, getting to know their stories. And everybody has an amazing story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's wild.
I have a question for you. I read this, and I think it was, I don't know, it was a couple of days ago. It showed up in my news feed. It was like an astrological forum where astrologers were discussing the validity of, or they were talking about this article, and I think it was like a peer-reviewed scientific journal or something that had done some kind of study, and it was suggesting that people who are into astrology have a higher percentage of being narcissists. Well, that was interesting. I could have like immediately got it because I was like, well, that would be like saying that, that there's a higher percentage of people who go into therapy who are focused on themselves, or, it's
Right.
like kind of like not a fair thing to say in some ways, because astrology is about self-understanding in so many ways.
Yeah.
But just off the top of your head, you said astrology helps people.
Yeah.
How does it help people? And I'm think I'm going to ask more people than just you this. I don't mean to put you on the spot. I'm going to ask the next person who comes on the show the same question. How does astrology help people in ways that are not just, navel gazing, self-helpy, self-obsessed? Because it's more than that, isn't it?
Oh, it's totally more than that. I mean, for one thing, it helps you understand other people.
Yeah.
Right. So like the judgments you might have on other people, like, oh, that person is like too loud, too expressive, too flamboyant, that person, oh, they don't know how to engage socially. I mean, there's all of these judgments we can make. And then when you learn astrology, when you learn sort of the makeup of, the planets and how they are, it gives you this compassion and tolerance. It gives you a tolerance. It gives you a compassion, and it helps you to see the world and other people in a totally different light. And it gives you perspective. And I mean, especially now in a world that's like super divided and super opinionated and super combative. It's just it's really helpful in just understanding other people. God, so much more than that. Yeah, but I'll pause there.
No, that's a good one. That was a really good response. I hadn't thought about it from that angle. Of course, I went right to the idea that really it's carving out a space for people to engage with their experiences and with the nature of experience from a place that is, it's self-reflective, but it's also about getting some distance from the attachments that we have to everything, because suddenly they become your experiences can become like this literary mandala that you can reflect on. These are eternal archetypal themes, and everyone experiences them in different variations, and it helps me not take myself too seriously. That's what it does for me. So I thought it was interesting. However, one of the reasons I do interviews like this, and that I focus on things like the Tao Te Ching for astrologers and stuff like that, is to remember what is our spiritual or psychological purpose for doing this, and something more than just I'm obsessed with the daily astrology news. Now, on that note, I want to ask you a question, because I set this up to lead into what I think is one of the most unique things I've ever seen, which is the artwork that you're making, which is astrological in nature. Here is your website, wildflowerastrology.com. You have a bunch of services, so I would point everyone to get a reading. Your services are right here. People can check those out. You've got sliding scale donation-based offering too. So I really appreciate that. I'm always very happy to see people who come out of my program, like, and I kind of pump it up to everyone, like, try to include this. That's kind of something that I'm passionate about. So I love that you do that. You've got a wild circle workshop. I won't go into that, but I want to show everyone, and here's your art too, in case people want to see.
Yeah.
Astro Drama. This is fantastic. Better than me trying to describe it and sounding like an idiot. How about you tell us about this and what it is, how it was conceived, and yeah.
Yeah, so I had been, again, I said prior, just letting this whole experience unfold, pretty slowly. And I'd been dragging my feet a little bit in terms of, like, I had dabbled in doing some forecast writing. And I'd been just kind of really thinking about it, like, well, what do I want to do that really feels like me, that's maybe a little bit different? And finally, one day, I just said, all right, you gotta sit down. You have to just start writing. So I started writing, and that first one that I did, Joie de Vivre, I started to cast the planets as characters in kind of like a scene, right? So that was that first one that I wrote. And, I was talking about Venus in her garden of delights, and, I just sort of rolled out this scene. And so it just kind of went from there. And I thought, well, which I've thought for a long time, like, we experience these dramas every day where life is a drama. And the way the sky speaks is a drama. It's theater. And I thought, well, it's like a celestial theater. And I thought, okay, well, this is something that I can really shape and get excited about. And it's, a type of forecast writing that's a little different than maybe what people would be normally used to. But I mean, I think people are doing it in so many different ways that, it's just another way to experience the transits and what's happening in the sky. And, sometimes I'll be really specific, and I'll really sort of pull in like a lot of transits and shape whatever the story or the drama is around that. Sometimes I'm referring to things in like pop culture. So, with the Dionysian Rapture, I'm talking about Jim Morrison. And I'm talking about, Mars square Pluto. I have a background in media arts and, different things like that. So sometimes I reference films. I'll be talking about a film and comparing it to pulling the transits into talking about the film. So that's basically how it started. And, and I committed to doing one a week, which is, it's definitely like, oh gosh, what am I going to write about? Write about this week? Because that pressure is on, right? But, something always pops up. And sometimes, sometimes it's a poem, like the Sweetly Blinded one. That was more of a poem. So they're poems, they're audio dramas. The Honey Guzzle one is pretty hilarious because it was a true story that happened to my friend about this bear that got into her house right with when Mars was conjunct Uranus in the North Node.
Right.
And it was just like so speaking to that transit that the bear got in, and it was like got into her honey and the maple syrup and the crackers. And she had never had an experience, anything happen like that in 10 years that she lived there. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, during this transit, so crazy things like that. So yeah, so I'm just playing with it and having fun with it.
Yeah, I mean, if I click on this, you can see that there's a video page that pops up. I can't play it because it tends to frag out the stream, but just so people understand, you come in here into this celestial theater, and they are audio, they are visual, they are spoken word, they're very interesting. So I just really hope that everyone will go and check it out, because I just love what you're doing. I mean, I think, as astrologers, you got your standard stuff like teaching astrology or giving readings or creating content. It's the content piece that is so wide open right now, because we have a stage that's pretty wide open with things like YouTube and obviously the internet and social media and so forth. And what really caught my eye about these Astro Dramas is that I have never seen anything like it before. It's totally unique. It's very creative. And if we are going, people talk all the time about astrology evolving. And in my humble opinion, the evolution doesn't happen by adding more layers of theory. I'm fine with that. If people want to add the outer planets, you know, all sorts of asteroids or minor aspects or whatever. And I don't have a problem with that. But I don't think that astrology evolves simply because you add more stuff in terms of technique. I think it evolves in terms of how creatively we imagine the symbols along as life keeps going along. So what I love about this series is that in watching some of these, I feel like if you sit with them and take them in like you would going to an art gallery, but you have knowledge of the symbols of astrology, they're making you think about the symbols in completely new ways. It's like you know the symbols, but these pieces of art just bring them out in ways that are very unique. And it reminds me of the daimon. We've talked about the daimon in class. Of course, you've heard me talk about that. We had Sean Nygaard, my good buddy, come and talk about the daimon this summer. You said something earlier about when was it your grandmother that handed you the writing pad or the sketch pad?
My mom. Yeah, my mom.
It was your mom. Okay, so it was your mom. Because you were at grandma's house though, right? Yeah. Okay. So she hands you the sketch pad, and then you said, "I just held on for dear life."
Yeah.
And to me, that's grabbing the coattails of that daimon, that spirit that has its own agenda for our lives. And if the only thing we can really do is be in service to it or just like hold on to it. I had a dream the other night, Colleen, where I was in this dark place. It was like almost like Disney World, but all the lights were off. It was like a theme park of some kind. And I went into this darkened like arena where there was a roller coaster inside the arena, and the roller coaster was active, but there was no one like manning it, you know, like no one there like welcome in, buckle up, and all, you know, so all that. So and I got on the ride, and there were other people like tentatively getting on, and the roller coaster took off, and it didn't have any handles to hold on to. And so I just had to kind of like brace myself. And as it was twisting and turning and just going at the speed of light, there was this kind of knowing, not like a voice, just kind of a gnosis that was like, anything that you love will be a ride like this. You know, anything you really love will be a ride like this. And I remember like I woke up and I wrote it down because I was like, oh my God, that was a really profound dream. And I was reflecting afterward on how, whether it's been astrology or I don't know, like family life with my kids or something, the things that I love the most, it's exactly like you said. It's like hold on for dear life.
Yeah.
And to me, I have to check in and make sure, am I still holding on for dear life, or have I tried to develop some safety rails and, you know, and like, and one of the ways I personally know that I'm holding on for dear life and letting the daimon sort of lead me where it will is if there is some element of risk and creatively in what I'm doing. Yeah. That there's some fear of like, I have to say this, I feel like I have to do it, it has to come out, but I don't know how it'll be received, or, you know, there's some like creative tension. Anyway, I felt that very strongly when you were describing the sketch pad. And again, when I hear you talk about this series and how you make it and the pressure you feel around it, to me, it's the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's so amazing. That's such an amazing dream. What's interesting too about it is sometimes these moments, and with that moment in particular, it was so subtle and I could have easily just knocked it aside. Right. Like it was that subtle. You know, there really was no reason for me to pick up that pencil. Mm-hmm. Right? There was, but for some reason I did. And mm-hmm. Sometimes some of these moments are so subtle, they're like whispers. Yeah. You know, they'll come in as a whisper, and maybe maybe it would have shown up another way, right? Yeah. Somewhere down the line, maybe it would have come back. I have no idea. But they come as whispers, and it's just like you know, over and over, like, you know, the astrology, it proves itself. I see it in my own life. I see it in other people's lives. I see turning points, you know, that happen, that are major turning points that evolve from like this kind of a whisper, like, oh, it was just like this really simple thing that happened. And then it just, you know, it changed my life.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was just thinking, I heard someone say this at some point, and I don't remember who said it, but the idea that love, the things what you said about there was no reason, right? And it's like, isn't that the nature of love too? It's like, well, there's you don't need a reason to love. That's what's so amazing about love, is it needs no justification or no reason. I think a lot about that poem by Mary Oliver, Wild Geese, like just letting your soft animal body love what it loves. Just kind of just allowing to, and that's soft. It's the same thing. That's soft. It's subtle, right? It's often soft. And I love that we're bringing for, because your artwork, in my opinion, is very bold, right? And sort of provocative,
Yeah.
and really interesting and fun.
Yeah.
But I love that your story, all the way up to the creation of this kind of astrological artwork, it begins with something very subtle, and there was a lot of uncertainty in the way that you're calling in, as an astrologer, at least gestated, like your calling as an artist was slow and developmental. And yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
This has been really interesting. What else could we share about what you're up to right now, or is there anything else we could share with the audience about what you're doing?
Yeah, so I'm obviously doing readings. There's a workshop that I'm going to be offering if they want to check that out, where I'm actually like, it's going to be a small workshop. There's only 10 people in it, and that is the not the Wild
Oh,
Circle.
not that one.
No, let's see. Can you click on the workshops again? Or
Yes.
maybe, okay, there it is. Yeah, so this Wild Creative
Aha, right.
workshop is a 5-week workshop that we're going to explore like art and photography and writing, if you're interested in that. But more through the lens of the planets and the archetypes, and using that as a prompt. So if you have questions, you can email me about that. And I am trying to start a Patreon, that would meet twice a month for the lunation cycles. So if you want to check that out too, it's under the workshops as well. So those are 2 things that I'm starting to do. I mean, your Roots and Spheres workshop sounds like amazing. I was watching the video with you and Ashley when you did it recently, and it's, oh wow, it looks fantastic. So
Yeah, really excited. I'm excited to see people doing this kind of thing, where the goal is really, let's embody the astrology. Let's bring it into a more participatory sphere. I mean, I make content so that people can listen to it, on their headphones or driving to work or whatever. But I think to take it outside the sphere of information exchange and into a space of action, whether that's through art or, obviously there's great therapists who use astrology. But I think, for Ashley and I, a lot of that is going to be hopefully involving some herbs,
yeah.
herbal teachers and stuff like that. But I was just thinking, as I was looking at that course, when I was in my MFA in creative writing, we had to read, not just from the standpoint of developing craft, but from the standpoint of looking at artistic pedagogy. We had to read The Artist's Way. I think have you ever read that before?
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be cool if there was an Artist's Way for astrologers?
Totally.
It sounds like that's kind of what your course is like in a nutshell. I mean, like, that's just what I thought of instantly.
Yeah, I'm testing things out. I'm trying things. And so, things will evolve over time, I'm sure. But as I said, there's like this new incredible amount of freedom that I'm feeling, in terms of, how to go about, how do we talk about art? How can we look through the lens of astrology? How can we kind of look at our charts? And that workshop in particular also comes with like private mentoring sessions. So you get the workshops and you get some mentoring as well. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, well, okay, let's end with one last question. And everybody check out Colleen's work, both the Astro Drama that we were looking at and the upcoming workshops and other services that she provides at wildflowerastrology.com. But Colleen, I want to leave you with one last question, which is people who are just getting into astrology. They're taking some of my courses like you did or somebody else's courses. They're starting to think about doing this. Get one good piece of advice or maybe two pieces of advice that you have for people who are just starting on the path of study?
Yeah. Wow. Let yourself really just have the experience, like be open to the experience, be open to the teaching, go at your own pace. Like you don't have to compare yourself to like how other people might be jumping into it or doing it. You know, be true to yourself and what it means to you. I mean, it's a very personal process. And I think everybody, you know, has their own way of moving forward with it. One of the other things that I've done is, you know, I've reached out to other people, astrologers that I really admire and resonate with, and, you know, connected to people that way. So getting mentoring from, you know, other astrologers that who've, like I've worked with Kat a little bit, you know, a while ago. So just if you have the means, just reaching out to different people like that. And I'm working with a couple of other astrologers right now too. And so, you know, that's really, really helpful. You know, and if you're taking a tutor's class, you're in really good hands. It's an amazing program. You know, it's solid. Like, yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
That's really nice of you. What I'm really thrilled about is that cool people come to this class like yourself who make cool things, and that I can then share what you're doing and try to support the people who come through my program, because you know, to me there's, you know, I've always operated under the belief that when you take joy in other people's success and other people's abilities, that it makes me more interesting and creative in my own work. So I just really appreciate you and everything that you're doing, and yeah, and some of the inspiration that you've given me this summer, and some of the ways that I've been thinking about symbols, looking at your series. So thank you for everything you're doing. It's really cool.
Oh, Acyuta, thank you so much. It's like such a pleasure to be invited and to speak with you. And then also, I just have to, you know, reciprocate the thanks, and that, like, you know, how you show up for your students and how you show up for the astrology, and like the depth and the spirit and the consciousness that you bring to it is just amazing.
Oh, thanks. We need a big hug if we were in person right now. Well, thank you so much for being here, Colleen. Really appreciate it. Everyone, be sure you check out Colleen on Instagram, astro_wildflower, or her website, wildflowerastrology.com. Really appreciate it. Before you go, don't forget to like and subscribe and share your comments. Click the notification bell for updates. If you want a transcript of today's talk, you can find it on the website, nightlightastrology.com. Don't forget, we've got 2 classes. Pre-registration sale lasts until September 12th on those 2 classes. Hope to see some of you in those classes when they start in the beginning of the new year. So thank you guys for listening, and we will talk to you again soon. Bye.